as we celebrate. Hello, I think we are live now. Sorry, I jumped the gun there. Welcome everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight as we celebrate the Edge of Burnhead Wood. My name is Miranda. For those of you that don't know me, I'm your Whiskey and Almond Events Coordinator. And this is an event that has been under construction for a very long time. Tonight is going to be an absolutely epic production with our friends from Balvenie Distillery, and we are so excited to be able to bring this experience to you guys. Together, we created multiple concepts for this. We had to throw a bunch away and reconceptualize. This is an event that has been in the works for quite some time now, and we really did work quite hard to be able to bring the best experience directly to your homes. And what better experience, in my opinion, than a virtual visit to Balvenie Distillery, backed by some incredibly delicious and rare whiskey, and in the company of the very people who created those whiskies, Balvenie royalty, if you will. Just a couple of things to get out of the way very quickly. I would grab a big glass of water if you haven't already, because we're going to be here for 2 hours, and that's not including the after party. The cocktail that you have in your event pack, we will be enjoying at the halfway point during the designated cocktail break, where we'll be able to bring Lachlan Watt, the bar manager from Whiskey and Almond, in to tell you all about it and show you how to make it. But apart from that, I think just direct all of your comments and questions to the chat box on the side. And without any further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you guys to the Balvenie Distillery team. Ross, would you like to take it away?
Would love to. Yeah, thank you so much, Miranda. Great to see you. Thanks to everyone for tuning in tonight. We're really excited for this. This is something totally different. It's something that we've not done before, but we're really excited that you guys are along for the journey and for the story of doing this tonight. My name's Ross Blaney. I'm the Balvenie brand ambassador for Australia and New Zealand. So I think I've probably met quite a lot of you before. If I haven't, I'm sure we'll be able to catch up for a dram at some point in the future. But I'd like to start by introducing you to the rest of these legends here who are going to be sharing this journey. I'm going to go around the screen. If you guys could just give us a quick wave and say hello as we go around. So first one along, we have James and Charlie, our distillery ambassadors. Hello, guys. Good. And then we go one more along. We've got Gemma Pat, who is our global ambassador for Balvenie. Gemma is also the driver tonight, or the producer, or the puppeteer, making all the screens move and doing things. So thank you very much, Gemma. You'll see Gemma popping up a little bit later on.
Yep. Hello. Any technical difficulties, you can blame on me.
And also, well, I suppose, I mean, this is our first time doing this. It is some kind of new technology. I mean, a lot of you will have done some kind of different Zoom tastings and things. Things don't always go to plan, but we're okay with that. We'll do what we can. But thank you very much, Gemma. Thanks for doing that for us. Thanks for driving.
I'm just going to say quickly as well, we have a lot of comments coming in. So for everyone watching, if you want to keep commenting, we'll go through the comments as we're going through, and we can kind of flash them up on the screen now and then as well. So please comment.
Great. And if you've got questions as well, you know, we've got a wealth of knowledge here. So please put up your questions as well, and we'll get around as many as we can. So moving around again, we have Kelsey McKechnie down the bottom corner there. Kelsey is apprentice maltmaster at Balvenie. She's in the sample room in Glasgow at the moment with all those hundreds of little whiskey bottles behind. So hello, Kelsey.
Hello, I am indeed. We are live from Glasgow, so I've definitely got a few drams to keep me busy.
Yeah, it looks great. It looks great. I'm missing that room. I love that place. Love it. And then moving along, we have David Stewart, or to give you your full title, David Stewart MBE. I'll give you the whole thing. Okay. David is at home in Glasgow as well. David, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us for a chat today. So hello.
Okay, delighted to be with everyone. Yes, I'm David Stewart. I'm the Balvenie Maltmaster, so delighted to be here this morning in Scotland.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, David. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you being here with us. So yeah, that's the introductions for us. And we're going to move through the night. We have a few whiskies and a cocktail. We'll run through the whiskies kind of in order, but don't hold back too much. I mean, don't drink them all at once, please. Drink responsibly, have some water. But it's not going to be, you don't have to wait for me to tell you to drink the whiskey. We're here to enjoy ourselves and have a drink. So if you're wanting to move on to the next whiskey, feel free to pour it out, have a nose and have a taste. But without any further ado, I think we should get started. And we're going to kick things off with a little video from the Balvenie, just to get us in the mood. There's something really special about Balvenie when you get there. For some of you that might have been there, there's a really special feeling around Balvenie. It's very homely. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and it just feels nice to be there. So I want to start things off with this video, which kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what it feels like. So if you feel like you want to pour your first whiskey, and we'll go ahead with the video. So yeah, Gemma, let's go for it. Thank you. Wow, I absolutely love that video. I'm mesmerized when I see the sounds, the sights of Balvenie. You've got to see a bit of Balvenie there. We're going to see much more of it tonight. Part of what you've seen there is part of what Balvenie is built on. So you can see the crafts that we have at Balvenie, from growing barley in our own farm there to malting our own barley in our own traditional malting floors. You caught a glimpse of Dennis McBain, our first coppersmith, who looks after our copper pot stills that we distill in. You saw the guys in our cooperage looking after the barrels and building the barrels that we age our whiskey in. And those first four crafts are, such a big part of what Balvenie is built on. And obviously the fifth craft of the malt master and David, who we'll be chatting with. These five crafts are really, a big part of what Balvenie is built on. But tonight we're looking at the other part of what Balvenie is built on, and that's stories. And stories are how we communicate our knowledge and our experience and our passion over generations. It's how people learn. And that's what the whiskies that we'll be drinking tonight are really celebrating, the fact that Balvenie is not just built on these crafts, but built on the stories of how they are made. So that's what we want to delve into a little bit more. But before we get into that, we're going to go straight to the distillery. So I think we should be joining James and Charlie in the courtyard. Or is it just James? Here we go. There you are. Hello, James.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Ross.
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. The amazing day here. It's middle of September, and it could be summer in another country.
Summer in a different country. It looks beautiful. It looks amazing. There's nothing better than a sunny day in Dufftown.
Yeah, I thought I'd sort of start the site broadcast by standing in front of the duck pond.
Yes, it's probably, I think it's the first part that people see of the distillery maybe, and it's just such a nice spot to kind of hang out, and you get a view of the distillery. Is there any ducks in there at the moment?
There are a few. They're quite cosmopolitan, our ducks. They're here for a while, and then they'll toddle up to Glenfiddich if the water's a bit warmer. And then they'll come back again. We've got the same number of ducks, and they go between the two.
So they're pretty lucky
dams,
ducks to have the choice of the two of them. I always find it interesting. Maybe James, you can tell us a bit about why do the ducks hang out in the water there? What's the reason that they like hanging out between Balvenie and Glenfiddich down the road?
Okay, I'll try and do this with visuals. If I turn around a little bit and this thing comes with me, I don't know if you can see there behind me, the little bit of steam coming out. I'm trying to get my head out of the picture.
Yeah, we can see it there.
Okay, so a bit of technical information. They're condensers, part of the distillation process. Your viewers will probably know this. And we need cooling water for the condensers, and that cooling water is sourced from the dam. The dam's actually river water from the River Fiddich. What that means is as that cooling water goes through the condensers, when it comes out, it's a bit warmer. And if any of you have ever seen these wonderful pictures of Balvenie in the winter and have seen the dam, it's steaming. It's steaming because the water is warmer than the ambient air temperature, and I think the ducks love that. It keeps them nice and warm in the winter. And leads to some strange algae and things growing as well.
Yeah, I don't know why that's always kind of amazed me. When I think the first time I was maybe at Balvenie in the middle of January, and it was pretty cold. It was pretty frosty, but all the ducks were still in the water. I couldn't work out why they were in there. I thought they're not freezing in there. But then I was told no, it's like a little jacuzzi for the ducks.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's you get this amazing image. If you get a snowy but sunny day here, you get this sort of snow all around, brilliant and bright. But then you've got all of this sort of steam rising up off the dam. It's a fantastic scene. Brilliant if you happen to be brave enough to come and visit us in the deep midwinter, and it's a reward for your efforts, I think.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place, and I suppose for everyone watching, I mean, you can see behind James there. I mean, maybe James, could you point out to us maybe? I know the screen's kind of inverted, so it's difficult to point in the right direction. But if you could point out a couple of what we're looking at behind you.
Yeah, I'll try and risk working backwards a little bit. So the big
don't fall over.
building that you can see is what we would call the house. What the process guys call the house. That's where the mill, the mashing, the fermentation process takes place. So that we're going to be inside a little later, and then we've got. If I go this way, no, wrong way. If I go that way, you can see that's the still house, which definitely looks better from the inside rather than the outside. We're going to have a look quite soon at, of course, one of the buildings that makes Balvenie really special. If I can get out the picture again, the maltings, which we're going to go inside and have a look at. And then in between,
beautiful building as well.
Fabled Warehouse 24, which began its life as this wonderful Georgian mansion many years before we were ever here, back in the days when people only made whiskey up in the hills. And we turned it into a distillery, and in later times we turned it into a warehouse and used the bricks to make the maltings. But yeah, it's a great site. It's also I think one of the things that's wonderful about Balvenie is it's like in a little oasis between Glenfiddich and all of our warehousing and engineering and the cooperage and things like that. It's this little green Victorian era kind of oasis that looks absolutely brilliant, and you can't see it. You can't see it from the road. You can't see it. It's just hidden away. It's brilliant. Don't see it until you get down here.
It's something. I mean, it looks beautiful behind you, and what you've showed us there. I mean, although it looks great now, I suppose it doesn't do it justice for seeing it in person. When you can actually look at it. Since we're outside looking at the distillery, just what you mentioned there. I mean, for anyone asking questions, James has an incredible knowledge of the history of our distillery and William Grant and Sons overall, our the family company that owns Balvenie. And I just find how Balvenie came to be there. So from Balvenie Castle to New Balvenie House to what it is now. James, would you mind telling us a little bit more about that, of how Balvenie came to be there?
Yeah, for sure, Ross. Thank you. So Glenfiddich, of course, built 1886, 1887 by William Grant and his family, was a very, very small venture at the time. It was their life-saving scrape together to build that distillery, and it was quite successful right from the off. This was a period when blended Scotch was just really started taking off. A lot of the whiskies that we would be familiar with today, like Johnny Walker's, Haig's, they were just starting to hit a broader market outside of Scotland. And distilleries were starting to set up here to make spirit for those blenders. And William Grant and his family were doing well with Glenfiddich, and they're pulling the water off the Conville Hills. And of course, the water is the absolute vital starting point for decent single malt. And the reason all these distilleries are here is because the water is fantastic. The spring water on the hills, where Charlie's going to be a little bit later on up on the Convilles. That's where we're getting our water from, and that's where the water was coming for Glenfiddich. And a guy called Peter Dawson, who was a rival distiller back then, put in a bid to build a distillery here, and it would have given that's the railway, and it would have there's another reason for building here, and it would have given him the rights to some of the water off the hills. Now William Grant recognised that part of the success of Glenfiddich was the decent water that he was pulling off the Convilles. Didn't want to share it, so he put in a rival bid, and then was really faced with needing to convert an old farm and an old mansion into a working distillery, which would become eventually Balvenie. But he was a canny businessman as well, as we all know. And before he'd even built Balvenie, he started writing to different blenders, pretty much saying, "I've got 2 distilleries. Would you like to take some spirit that's going to be just as good as Glenfiddich from me? It's just parked next door." At the time, it didn't have a name. And that's how we came about. We came about to protect the water source, and we've been pulling the water off the Convilles ever since.
Ever since, wow! And the name Balvenie has come from the house that was there before, and the castle, which is great as well.
Well, one of the funny things, well, something I find quite funny is they built a distillery in New Balvenie Castle on the Mains of Balvenie farm in the Balvenie estate, and they called the distillery Glengordon for about 4 months, until somebody must have said to William, "That's a rubbish name. Let's kind of call it Balvenie. It would make much more sense." Yeah.
Yeah, right. I didn't know that. That's amazing. It amazes me. I mean, your knowledge of the history of Balvenie is incredible, and it amazes me that of all the time I've worked for Balvenie now, there's still so much to learn. I mean, in whiskey in general, I'm always amazed with that, but even just with Balvenie, there's still so much to learn, which is, it's quite incredible.
Yeah, and when we've got people like Dennis around and Brian, you just get a little nugget of information, that just blows you away all the time. Yeah.
That's another little story from one of the guys that's been there for 40, 50, almost 60 years. There's always another little story, especially if you've got, we'll be talking about Brian a little bit later on. If you've got, I don't know, a nugget of information. It might take you 20 minutes to get that nugget of information, but you get an incredible story around about it as well.
Well, you definitely with Brian. Dennis is a bit more to the point, isn't he? Dennis will just cut you straight to the information. Brian, you've got to go on a journey.
And when you get the two of them together, when you get the two of them together, it's interesting. One very straight to the point, and one wants to tell the story for 20 minutes. It's interesting here. So many interesting characters, which hopefully we'll see a few people. I'm guessing the guys are, working in the distillery at the moment, and there's people in there going about their business generally.
Yeah.
I'm sure maybe bump into a few people along the way.
We should bump into some people in the Maltings, I think. And I think I can see Doug's car parked up, so he should be in the house. Can't see who the Stillman is today right now, but we'll find some people, I think, yeah. Yeah,
great. Well, before we move on to our next chat, James, could you just give us a quick rundown? We're going to be coming back to you intermittently. For everyone watching, we're going to go kind of from James moving around the distillery to another one of our special guests where we'll be talking about the whiskies or the cocktail. And in between each one, we're always coming back to James. So you're going to see lots of James. You're going to hear lots more from him moving around the distillery. And James, can you just tell us where you're going to be for the next couple of visits we have with you?
Ross, I'm going to go to Maltings if you think that's the right thing to do.
Yes, you're in charge. I'm going to follow you around. But the Maltings sounds great. I'm always happy to go with Maltings.
Okay, so in between, I'll head for the steeps and hopefully see you in front of some steeping barley in a short while.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, we'll join you in 10 minutes or so, and we'll see you in the malting floor. That sounds good. But yeah, thank you very much, James. And I think we'll go from here across to Kelsey in the sampling room, and we'll have a chat about our first whiskey. Hello, Kelsey. How you doing?
Yeah, really good. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. Doing good. I mean, everything's going pretty smoothly so far, so I think we're doing all right. We're doing good.
Touch wood.
No, you're right. I shouldn't have said that. No, I think we should be okay. I suppose, I mean, just to kick things off, if everyone wants to, if you haven't already poured the first whiskey we're going to be going through, which is this one here, which is the 12-year-old Balvenie Stories range, the 12-year-old, the Sweet Toast of American Oak. So we're going to talk a little bit through the story of the whiskey. If you want to pour yourself your whiskey, if you haven't already, have a little nose of the whiskey, have a little taste. And while you guys are doing that, I thought, Kelsey, just to start things off, can you tell us a bit more about where you are right now? I mean, I mentioned earlier how much I love that room that you're in, but everyone else might not know. Where are you?
So at the moment, I am in a blending room, which is in Glasgow. So as part of all of our blending processes with any of our distilleries, we do all of the blending and all of the quality checks from this room. So we get all of our spirits, and they look like this. So obviously our clear spirits, I'm sure everyone that's watching knows, just as soon as they run straight off of the stills, we get all of our samples sent here and all of our mature products. So you can see behind me, everything in this room is basically from the last sort of year or so's QC. So everything gets sent here where we do all our sensory. So we give it a good sniff, we make sure we're happy with the quality of it, and then we go ahead, select the casks to get them blended together so that each bottle that anyone buys anywhere around the world is absolutely perfect and it's been checked out this room.
Yeah, right. So every bit of whiskey that everyone's got in their glass at the moment, I mean, I suppose it kind of starts off, you're looking at things in that room and making sure everything that goes out is what yourself and David think is the best Balvenie going out there. Is that right?
Absolutely. So especially with any of our Balvenies, any of our finishes, we are so strict about the quality and making sure that everything is really tight and has that exact flavour profile and that sensory profile that we want every time. So he's worth a mention, but Brian Kinsman also works out this room as well. So Brian Kinsman is our master blender and Glenfiddich malt master. And so Brian obviously works out of this room as well, and all Glenfiddich products, which you can see I've more or less shifted because they don't matter right now.
It's Balvenie today.
Exactly. But out of this room, we do the quality checks and everything. So I'm obviously in such a fortunate position where I'm able to look at the quality of all of our brands. So especially like you mentioned, of any of our Doublewood products, once we fill into Doublewood butts, we'll start that sampling process maybe in about sort of 4-6 months. And at that point, we'll draw lots of random samples out of the batch. We'll bring them back into this little room and we'll make up a composite sample. And it's at that point that David, Brian and I will nose it, and then we'll decide if it's had just enough time in cask or if it needs a little bit longer. So from my point of view, it's so exciting being in here because any product that we've ever created has had its first life just in this room. So it gives you a bit of a puffed out chest, very proud moment.
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of history in that room. and so many whiskies that have gone all around the world, and they've all kind of started there. I'm quite interested in what you said there about how, I suppose, you're looking at the quality of all these things. How I've been in there when I'm with you guys as you're nosing and looking at different samples, and some of my fondest memories of drinking whiskey or smelling whiskey have been in that room. Can you tell us a bit more about how do you do that? Like, what do you do when you're looking at these samples that come in? How do you assess whether they're ready? If it's a double wood and it's been in the sherry for the sherry cask for maybe 6 months, what process do you go through to look at it to check if it's ready?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it definitely starts right at that clear spirit that we were talking about, right at new make. So every time that clear liquid runs off of the stills, we get samples off of every vat from Glenfiddich, Balvenie, all of our distilleries in the Lowlands. And so right at that point, we start all of the quality checks. So we want to make sure everything is as it should be, so that we know when we're filling the right quality new make spirit into good quality casks, we can allow it to sleep in there for a good while. And although every cask reacts a little bit differently, we're pretty confident that they're going to come out more or less how we want them to. So at that point, once it's mature spirit, we'll start tipping them together, moving them into the most appropriate wood types for the products that we're wanting to create. So like you were saying, when we draw lots of samples from a mature batch of whiskey, we are looking for a really specific sensitivity profile. So it's amazing actually doing nosing with Brian and David, because instead of comparing with a standard, because they've obviously been doing it so much as well, we can start to just nose the whiskey and we know whether or not it is where we want it to be. So definitely when I would start, and we do compare with references often. So if we're doing a single batch product, we want to compare with the last batch and see how like one another they are. But every month when we do things like cask finishing, so when we see our Portwood, our Caribbean cask, double wood, all of these fantastic products, we'll nose them, and we'll know just by using our nose whether or not it's ready to go or not, or whether it needs a little bit longer. So it's definitely one of my favourite times.
That's the amazing part for me still, is it's your nose that does it. Like, that's what it comes down to. I think I remember you saying something, with all the science that we can have now, there's no more powerful instrument that we can use to look at our whiskey than a human nose that's been trained well. I think it's just amazing.
Oh, absolutely. And so I used to work in the lab for years, so I'm definitely in the camp of having both is a great balance. When we analyse a spirit, it's great to have all of that data to make sure that we're producing and maturing spirit with the compounds that we want. But actually for our nose, we can give the result in 10, 20 seconds just by nosing it instead of waiting on equipment. So especially when it comes to different batches, when we analyse, we have to know what we're looking for. But with our nose, we can pick it up like that. So it's amazing. All of our instrumentation we've got, even if it says it's good to go, but we don't like the flavour of it or how it noses, we'll say it needs a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's almost like the scientific parts of it can measure individual parts of the whiskey and the different, I suppose, almost flavours and aromas that are in there a little bit, but there's nothing that can measure them when they're all together. That's where it takes your nose, and David and Brian as well. It's quite mind blowing. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's obviously a great position for me to be in with David, who's obviously served just a few years in the whiskey industry. So I think he knows what he's talking about. And
he's got a bit of experience. Remember, he can hear you as well. He's in the green room, so.
Exactly. So it's amazing for me to be able to work beside Brian and David and picking up all these little nuggets. And obviously the way that we create spirit, we're making sure that it has the same flavour profile, and that's basically how it noses and tastes each and every time we make it. So we want to make sure that Balvenie Doublewood and all these different products taste as good today as they have 15, 20, 50 years ago. So it's definitely about making sure they're as good as they have been, and also filling the pipeline to make sure that they're absolutely perfect. Yeah,
it's having that consistency so that we know every time we get that in the glass, it's going to be what we expect, and the dram that we've always enjoyed. It's really amazing. And speaking of which, we should maybe chat about this whiskey now, and and a little bit the story behind the Sweet Toast of American Oak. I think maybe good place to start with this is maybe your position within the company as apprentice malt master, and this being, I suppose I kind of look at this as your first Balvenie, which is your idea and your thought process. Yeah, how did this come around from becoming apprentice maltmaster to starting this whiskey?
Yeah, do you know, it has been such a proud process, if you like, for me, the entire way throughout this. So obviously I've worked in here for a couple of years, so actually being backstage, if you like, on a lot of our Glenfiddich products and working on Balvenie, I think I've always had that, oh my God, this is amazing, that really proud feeling. But actually to have something that you've been involved in right from the very concept and the thought process right the way through has been fantastic. And for us, we're definitely having so many different meetings on innovation and how we can do things differently. And it's something that we talk about a lot as well, especially in whiskey, because we are really strict, and the whole whiskey industry is, on what we can do to make sure that we can protect Scotch as well, because we're so proud of whiskey that we want to make sure that, you know, no one's able to mimic it and that we can do it really the way that we want to. So we always want to push the boundaries a little bit and create new and unique things. And definitely there's so much you can do in new make. You can change the distillation cut points, and there's a lot you can do in fermentation, extending those fermentation hours, bringing them in. But on mature, we were thinking, what could we do that would be new and exciting? And so we wanted to do something that would be a little bit unique, but not create something that people wouldn't recognise as a Balvenie. So we called up our friends in Kelvin Cooperage and said to them, let's start off with some virgin American oak barrels. And we know in these barrels, they give them a really, really light toast, a light char on the inside. And so that's, for anyone that's on the call that's watching, you know yourself, Ross, it's when you get that beautiful crocodile skin layer on the inside. So they give it a really light, and actually to release as much flavour into the spirit as we can. So we had said to them, let's extend that toast a little bit. We'll dial the heat back ever so slightly, and we'll expose the staves to that heat for a little. Because it was a little bit of a trial, we said, let's do it in this batch and send it over to Balvenie. And obviously because our own coopers are very proud and they wanted to have a go at it as well, we said to them, why don't you give them a double toast once we arrive at the distillery? And again, it was a trial. We didn't really know what it would do. And so at that point, the barrels, the virgin American oak casks, had been toasted twice, and we went ahead and filled them with 12-year-old Balvenie. So again, as we were saying, we do all our sampling process, a lot of nosing and tasting. Someone has to do it. So after about 4 weeks, we'd drawn a few samples, and at that point we were really, really pleased with it, even after just such a short time in cask. We'd dialed up a lot of those typical Balvenie notes, and even just the colour of it had really jumped up, so we knew that something really special had happened. And so for me, it's just been amazing being part of it entire process and being able to monitor the quality of it, and coordinate a lot with our cooperage in Speyside, and also going out to Kelvin Cooperage in Kentucky. It was amazing. So the finish on this is typically about 12 weeks. So we let it sit in the cask a little bit longer than that 4 weeks that we're talking about, but I hope you'll agree that it's definitely a beautiful dram.
It is, and I mean a short finish in some ways, but the effect it has in the whiskey it's such a great effect it has. You know, it's subtle enough, but it has that. I always feel silly when I'm talking about tasting notes for this whiskey, because I'll always say it's sweet and toasty, and it's in the name. But when you smell this, when you taste it, it's got that beautiful sweet maltiness, that kind of like brioche flavour, but it's got that little bit of a toastiness to it. I don't usually go too far into crazy tasting notes, but I remember smelling this for the first time and thinking of like a kind of a burnt marshmallow, like a slightly charred marshmallow, like the white marshmallows, not the pink ones. It needs to be the white ones, and that smell you get from a slightly burnt one. I kind of think that's what it's like for me.
Absolutely, it's a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bit of that caramelisation, and it gives you a beautiful, lovely, rich mouth coating effect as well. It's really nice.
So, and working with the guys, so the Kelvin Cooperage in Kentucky, those guys are some of the best for making barrels and toasting barrels. What was it like when you went over there? And part of the story is your journey over there to see how these barrels are made, and having a chat with Paul McLaughlin. Was it Paul the Kelvin Cooperage, who they originally began in Glasgow years and years ago, named after the River Kelvin, which made me happy being from Glasgow. What was it like going over there and hanging out with those guys and seeing them toasting the barrels the way they do?
Do you know, it definitely was an amazing, unforgettable experience, not because of Gemma's driving, although we can talk about that a bit later on.
I've been in a car with Gemma before. Great driver.
I know, perfect. I need you to watch Bell. Great. But definitely for us to go out there, we talk about it a lot. Obviously, all of our rare crafts at Balvenie and everything that we do that passes on from generation to generation, all of the things that we're so proud of. So for us to be able to go out there and actually see how they toast and char the barrels, how they monitor the quality, it is amazing. And so obviously at each of our distilleries, we have nosing panels. And so that's so that in the short term, everyone can nose the spirit. And before it reaches Brian, David and I, there's been 10, 20, 30 other people have nosed the spirit. They don't tell us what they think of it. And we wait until we've nosed the samples ourselves. And then we all meet and get together to discuss the quality. Because although we train ourselves to be able to pick up specific flavours, people who enjoy our whiskies around the world obviously have different taste palettes as well. So we want to make sure that everyone's happy with it. And the process that we go through of making sure that everyone is trained and able to do it is really special. So when we went out to Kelvin, it was amazing for us to see that actually the Coopers there, they have trained nosers as well. So they have people who, once they've toasted the casks, they're not specific about temperature, time, and they really react to each cask and treat it independently. So they'll toast the cask and they'll literally stick their head inside it. And they're looking for a really sweet toasted bread note, and that's when they know that the cask's ready to go. So it's amazing actually how many similarities there are between their cooperage and our cooperage and distillery.
It's such a cool, I mean, coming back to what we're talking about, nosing and them using their nose to know when the barrel is ready. I quite like the synergy between Kelvin Cooperage being so far away in Kentucky, but working with you and with us at Balvenie and having those really similar values of you don't always necessarily need the scientific part. It comes down to the person and what they've experienced and their knowledge that they've built up over time to know when it's just right by using their nose and what they've learned. It's a really nice little connection.
No, I completely agree. And we talk about it a lot of the time with people who want to get more involved in whiskey and they want to become better nosers. I always think that personally anyone has the ability to do it, but the hardest part is often that word association. So people who are new to whiskey and just starting out, they'll know there's a difference, but it's hard for people to put their finger on what that difference is. So obviously as part of our distilleries, starting up nosing panels, we train people to pick up certain flavours. So it is just amazing how you can actually train your palate to do it. And I talk about it like a language. You need to keep using your language to be able to stay fluent in it. So as part of our nosing, I mean, I don't know if you can see it, we've got masses of samples in front of us. So when we come in here, we want to make sure that we can keep using that vocabulary.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's a really good way of putting it as well. It's like a language, and I think a lot of people watching, I mean, at different levels of their whiskey journey, there's some really easy ones to pick up at the start, like vanilla and maybe honey and other things. But then, you build up your vocabulary of what flavors you can pick out of whiskies, and it makes it really interesting. That's incredible. Yeah, it's very much like a language. And well, I mean, and the story behind the whiskey is great. We love everything that's gone into it, but when it comes down to it, it tastes really good. It's a great whiskey.
No, I mean, obviously, I'm so lucky becoming an apprentice at Balvenie when, in a lot of ways, people have already done a lot of the hard work for me. So it's amazing to start when we've got so many talented people up at the distillery and so many talented people here at our bottling halls and everywhere else. So they definitely make it a very exciting and in some ways an easy job to do. It's a great position to be in, and we're very grateful for you doing it as well. So thanks for giving us this whiskey. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, well, I think we're going to go back to James. Kelsey, we'll see you again soon. You'll be back chatting to us shortly. If anyone has any questions for Kelsey, you can step them up with her. We'll get back to them a bit later on.
and we're going to go back to James, who will be somewhere in the malting floor. I'm going to guess he's upstairs. And yeah, he's upstairs. I'm guessing there's a massive mound of barley just next to him. James, are you there? Can we hear you?
Hi,
If I
Ross.
stop talking.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Tell us what we're looking at and where are you?
Yeah, I'm trying to have a go at being the ace cameraman by panning onto the wheelbarrows used for moving the barley around.
You're doing a great job so far.
Thank you. We're up in the malt barn, the grain store of the maltings. The maltings is on to an extent two floors. Up here we're going to store the grain, the harvested barley, ready for malting. Ross, do you want me to give you a quick you guess a quick rundown of what we're going to do?
Yeah, go for it. Give us the whole spiel. Tell us a whole lot. I can't wait to hear. I want to hear everything.
Okay, well I won't go too technical. We'll just keep it nice and friendly, as it's a Friday evening, Friday morning, depending on where you are.
Sure.
Okay, so what you're looking at here, I mean, we've been talking a little bit about the stories, the Balvenie stories, and the Edge of Burnhead wood particularly, and I know we talk about the purple heather and the importance of that in the kilning process, and of course having our own maltings has allowed us to do that experiment in whiskey making all those years ago. But also that expression is made with barley grown on the fields here around Dufton in the Mains of Balvenie farm, and then the barley has come to the maltings, and it's 100% homegrown barley that we use for that expression. And what you're looking at here is harvested barley from the Mains of Balvenie from last year's harvest. It tends to take us a while to get through it a little bit. I'll attempt to give you some sort of visceral experience here by popping my hand into it. I hope it's not too unpleasant for you, but
it looks great. I mean, I think it's always very tempting to want to jump into it. Don't do that, but it looks like tempting.
Yeah. One of the great things, one of the great things about coming to the maltings is the wonderful aromas that you get, and people will remember those aromas months and years later when they'll catch a whiff of that lovely sort of fresh malt when they're trying a Balvenie. There is that little bit of malt, particularly on the new make. You can still get that sort of barley scent coming off our new make spirit, can't you, Ross? And
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that maltiness is always there.
Yeah, you get that first wonderful nose when you come into the maltings from usually from downstairs from the malting floor. But I'll take you through it then. So this building was built in the late 1920s. It replaced our original maltings, which had been built into the old castle, or new Balvenie Castle, that we converted into part of our distillery. But this wonderful building, new Balvenie Castle, is still here because we use the bricks from the old mansion house to build this maltings and the kiln. So this is a very, very old building in more ways than one. In its current form, it's nearly 100 years old. And the stones here were fashioned first about 300 years ago to make new Balvenie Castle. So it's a building that sort of just feels like it's got so much history in it. And of course, because we still operate it as a traditional floor maltings, it's got that real sort of old, worldy sort of traditional feel to it.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Because of some of the restrictions we've had to operate under, we've not been able to use the maltings at 100%. So you can see there's a bit more space here for grain than there normally would be. But it gets delivered to us outside, and it goes into an elevator, and it comes out onto what is above us here, and it runs along, and then it's dropped down onto the floor here. And then what we'll do, if we're doing above any maltings, is we'll take 8 tons of the barley, and we will shovel it into, or if we're using the conveyor belt above, load it into the steep tanks, which I was about to walk straight over the barley to get to, but that's really not very respectful, is it? So I'll go around.
You don't want to get stuck in there.
No. So here we go. We've got 2 steep tanks. They both take 8 tons, and we'll drop the barley into here, as you can see, this one's empty. But again, because we're a bit short on bodies right now, they're just doing a steep at a time. We're not on full production by any means in the maltings. So
Right.
load it into here, and then what they'll do is they'll soak it in spring water, actually the same spring water that is used to make the whiskey. The reason for that is that any impurities that go into the barley at this point will be there in the whiskey in 12, 20 years later. And so we want the water to be as pure as possible. And also for that reason, or partly for that reason, during the 2-day steep that the barley is going to get, we'll drop the water out on a couple of occasions and freshen it up again. This helps to bring fresh, oxygenated water to the barley. So what happens is the barley starts to absorb the water, and this will begin the germination process for the barley. But the barley can drown. If you leave it to soak for too long, it will absorb too much water and it will drown, and then we can't do anything with it. So what we need to do also is, that's the other reason for dropping the water out and giving the barley a couple of air breaks in those 48-hour period, so that we don't overload the barley with water. And what we're actually looking to do is to get the moisture content of the barley to around about sort of 45, 46%. We won't measure it. We just know this by experience and what it looks like and how it feels. And that's about right to give it enough water, enough oxygen to be able to germinate.
Right.
Do you guess much like a very, very quick science lesson at the hands of an historian? So it'll be quite rough.
Yeah, you're the best person for it, James.
Well, I'm not sure that I really don't think I am. So I'm probably the least qualified to do this with everybody that's on this podcast. But okay, this is unmalted barley. Inside that seed is starch, solid starch, and that will not dissolve into water, and yeast cannot work with starch. So what we need to do is to break it down into a shorter, more simpler form of the yeast, which would be sugars. And to do that, we need to get the barley to do its natural job, because the barley also wants to do that. It needs to break down yeast into sugar to feed itself and grow. So all we're doing really in germinating is getting this barley to grow long enough to get the starch into a condition where it's soluble. It's often said, we convert starch into sugar in the maltings and then we just soak it out in the mashing. And that's not actually what happens. The big job really takes place in the mash tun with the hot water. What takes place here is preparing the barley for that job, which is it's grown enough to get the starch from a solid block into a soluble, dissolvable form. And then, of course, we'll dry it out in the kiln to stop that process. Right. Was that techie enough?
That was perfectly techie. No, I think we've all learned a lot from that. It's amazing. James, I'm keeping an eye on the time as well. Could we have a quick look downstairs as well and do we have anything down on the floor at the moment, on the malting floor?
Yeah, Ross, we do. That's where all the activity is taking place. It may get a bit noisy, so I'll apologise for that in advance. But we're going down here, and I'll sort of talk you through what happens. Here we go. Here's the activity itself, malting. So we'll drop a steep at the bottom of the steep tank, and then the boys here will do what you can see here, which is to make a maltings floor. And then what this allows the barley to do is to germinate at a nice gradual pace. And what they'll do is they'll throw the barley 2 or 3 times. In fact, it's 3 times in 24 hours, every 24 hours. So this is now got moisture in it. And you have to take my word for it, there's a lovely, lovely smell coming, a lovely aroma coming off this barley.
Yeah, I can imagine it myself. I can imagine the smell. It's probably my favourite part. I mean, when I'm at Balvenie, the first thing I always do is get into the malting floor. It's about smelling that smell, seeing all these little grains of barley that are waiting to become whiskey. Every single little grain of barley we're looking at and it's sitting in the malting floor, it's going to become whiskey. It's going to end up in a bottle. It's going to end up somewhere around the world. But that smell is incredible.
So you can see
it looks incredible. Look at the roots and the shoots there as well. It looks absolutely beautiful. James, I'm going to have to move to our next segment. I feel like a bit of a newsroom person here, but thank you very much for showing us the malting floor, and we will join you again in a little bit. We're going to move on to our next whiskey, and we'll see you across the courtyard in the next bit very soon. All right. Well, yeah, thank you very much to James again. if everyone would like to pour out your second whiskey, if you haven't already, we're going to be moving on to our story's 14-year-old, The Week of Pete. And we're going to be joined by Mr. David Stewart to have a chat about this, who is right there. Oh, there. Hello, David. How are you?
Hi, Ross. Thank you. In my home in Glasgow.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for having us. Thank you for having us in your home. It's nice to be there with you.
Great. Great to be here. I've got my little whiskey poured here just to.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it's almost 12 o'clock there, so we're close enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, great. Well, I thought, while everyone is having a little look at the Week of Pete, I suppose people will notice that an unusual whiskey for Balvenie being peated. So just to point out there, this is a peated Balvenie. So if everyone wants to have a little nose of the whiskey, have a taste. David, you can have a chat for a little bit. And
okay.
I think it'd be good to start with, you had celebrated a bit of a milestone a couple of weeks ago. How long have you been with the Balvenie and William Grant & Sons?
Well, it's just past 58 years there, Ross. So on the 3rd of September was my 58th year with the company. So I started on the 3rd of September 1962 in the Whisky Stocks team. I was lucky that my boss was the master blender. I started as a Whisky Stocks clerk, really never thinking I would get into the side of the business. Yeah. But I think maybe the family asked Hamish, maybe we should start training someone else up in the nosing kind of aspect of the side of it. So Hamish brought me into the sample room after 2 years, and I spent, he brought in a lot of samples for me to nose, American oak barrels, and to show how whiskey ages, Spanish oak sherry casks. Looking at the bottling samples that were coming through at that time, obviously back in the 60s and into the early 70s, our expressions were pretty limited back then.
Yeah.
So I spent 10 years doing that with Hamish and doing other training, selecting casks to create our blended whiskies to Glenfiddich back then. And I was for me, Hamish decided to leave the company and move to another company as their master blender. So I had to just keep everything going, and I did that for a period of 6 months. I think the family or the powers that be were looking around the industry to see if they could bring in someone with a bit more experience than I had at blending.
Yeah.
But luckily for me, they didn't find anyone. So at the end of 1974, they gave me the job as the company's master blender.
That's incredible.
Yeah, for Glenfiddich and Balvenie and Grant. And I did that for the next 35 years. And Kelsey mentioned her little piece. Brian obviously is now the company's master blender. So I brought Brian in 2001. Then, because it's a long training period, we like to train our own people, to be fair, rather than bringing in a blender from another company.
Yes.
So I'm the 5th blender for William Grant. Brian's now the 6th. So he trained with me for the next 8-9 years. And at the beginning of 2010, he took over the master blender role. And at that stage, I was asked would I like to carry on my role as a Balvenie malt master, which I've been doing for 35 years anyway. So really, so for the last 10 years, I've been the Balvenie malt master, working on a, you might call a semi-retired basis, not working full time, but we've done a lot. We've done a lot in these last 10 years. We've refreshed the core range, what we've offered to travel retail. We've changed the single barrels. We've launched a number of ton expressions. So I've done quite a lot to keep me busy over these last 10 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've done so much. I mean, just 58 years with the company. I always think it's amazing to think everyone watching will know, it's from 1962 until now, so much has changed in the whiskey industry. I mean, back then, single malt wasn't really a big thing. It's only really been, the last maybe 20, 30 years that it's increasingly got so much more popular. What have you thought has been like a big change, maybe for you and that you've seen in the industry over 58 years? What have you noticed that's changed a lot?
Yes, well, you're correct in saying when I started, it was all about blended whiskey. Really, there was single malts weren't really on offer at that point, and the family, took a great big risk in deciding to bottle Glenfiddich. So we started to bottle Glenfiddich 8 years old in 1963.
Yeah,
and really we probably had the next 10 years without very little competition. And then the rest of the industry just saw how successful and how profitable single malts were. So then others like Glenlivet and Macallan started to bottle their single malts as well. So yes, it was all about blended whiskey. And even today, blended whiskey still accounts for probably something like 75% of the industry sales. So blended whiskey is still very important to the Scotch whisky industry. Yeah, I suppose over the years as well, there was many more smaller companies in the industry when I started as well. Companies like Hayes and Ballantyne's and Johnnie Walker. Now, these have been merged or amalgamated into two big companies like Diageo and Pernod. And of course, more recently, in the last 25, 30 years, cask finishing has allowed the industry to offer different flavour profiles from the same distillery, and we've been instrumental with Balvenie in offering a lot of cask finishes. Our core range is all about cask finishing.
Yeah. Well, that's such an interesting part of what you've done, and I think myself very lucky to have learned so much from you and the things that you've done in your career. Two of the things I've found most interesting, one being cask finishing and how that came around and your thought process behind it, and the other one being how you balance a whiskey, especially with a whiskey like this that everyone is drinking now with the peat. But we'll come to that in a second. But for starting, for cask finishing back in the early 80s was when you were playing around with the flavors of American oak and the flavors of the Spanish oak or European oak sherry casks. What was it like at that point for making the Balvenie Classic being that first cask finished whiskey?
Yeah, well, it was at that stage we had just one Balvenie, Ross, which was the Balvenie Founders Reserve. It started off as an 8 years old, and after a number of years we increased the age to 10 years old, and that was a marriage of three different cask types: a first bourbon, April bourbon, and Spanish oak sherry cask. And then I was asked in the early 80s, we'd like to create I was given the name Balvenie Classic, and the family wanted to do a no-age statement at 12 years old and an 18 years old. And I wondered, how would I do something a little bit different from what we've currently got? And I knew the big difference between American oak and Spanish oak. So I thought, well, what would happen if we actually recast some whiskey from American oak barrels into first fill Spanish oak sherry cask? So that's what I did, just in very limited quantities, a no-age statement, somewhere between 8 and 10 years old whiskey, a 12 years old and an 18 years old. Got samples drawn every month, sent to me. And then when I was pretty happy with the quality of it, I passed samples around the company, around the family. They were all happy with it. So in 1983, we released these three Balvenie Classic expressions. And that was around four Balvenie whiskies. So that took us right through to the early 90s, approaching the Balvenie centenary year, which is 1993. And again, I was asked to kind of refresh the range. So I thought, well, what will we do here? And I thought, well, why don't we take the Balvenie Classic as one of the new expressions? I didn't come up with the name Downward, but the global team, I think, wanted to show how this whiskey was created. And it was just around about that time that this word finish started to be used. Yeah. So the Balvenie Doublewood has American oak, recast into Spanish oak sherry cask for roughly 9 months.
Yeah, it's amazing hearing you tell that story, David. I think just the way that you tell it as well. You know, cask finishing is such an important thing for us at Balvenie, but also Scotch whisky and also whisky around the world. And here in Australia, you know, everyone, I'd say probably most distilleries in the world have done cask finishing of some point. And then I think it's amazing when you think back to the early 80s when you were making this, and you said there you were thinking about the flavors you get in this and the flavors you get in this, and you thought, well, what if you take it out of that, put it in there, and that's what you did. And it's just like, oh, well, that's what we did. We put it from there into there, and cask finishing started, and now it's turned into such a big thing. It's amazing. It's amazing to hear that from you, David.
I didn't think I was doing anything special back then. I just wanted to try and do something a little bit different. I knew something would happen, taking from American oak into European oak, Spanish oak sherry cask. I knew it would certainly pick up a lot of colour from the sherry cask. It would pick up that richness, spiciness, dried fruits, all that complexity that you get from whiskey that's been in Spanish oak sherry cask. So yeah. And of course,
we're glad you did it. We're glad you did that. I love the double wood. We love cask finishing. And then moving on to the whiskey that everyone's drinking at the moment, we've got the Week of Peat, which give everyone a quick background of that whiskey. It's made essentially in a week at the distillery where we do a peated run. So all our barley from the malting floor that we've just seen is peated in our kiln using local Speyside peat. And it makes such an interesting peated Balvenie. What I'm kind of interested in hearing from you, David, is I've always thought, Balvenie is so well balanced in the way that you have created these whiskies over the years, and when it comes to the end part, looking at the different barrels that are selected, how do you go about balancing those flavors and making having peat in there as well, which is generally seen as such a big flavor? But in this, hopefully people have seen that it fits in there just nicely. It's not overpowering. You've still got that rich sweetness of Balvenie. How do you go about knowing the style of Balvenie and balancing it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ross. Well, that's anything we do with cask finishing or anything we do with Balvenie, we still want that traditional honeyed vanilla sweetness that come through. So here we're using, as you say, we used kind of Aberdeenshire. Peat came from Aberdeenshire. It's not the same sort of peat that you get on Islay. Islay peat is more influenced by the kind of sea, whereas the Highland peat is a more delicate peat. It's maybe sort of moss and grasses and tree roots, compacted for thousands of years. So it's a more delicate peat. We decided to take a week out, as you say, every year. And we started this in 2002 by just bringing in peat, using that peat to dry our barley, and producing a week's worth of spirit, which were put into different cask types. So we've got that peated spirit in American oak barrels, the refill American oak barrel. We've got it into sherry cask as well to give us a bit of flexibility in the future. To create different expressions. But back from 2002, we had no real plans exactly what we're going to do with it, how we're going to leave it, or how long we're going to leave it. Would we bottle it as Balvenie? Would it go into some of our blended whiskies? And it was only as I kept sampling it year after year, and we have done a number of 14-year-old kind of limited editions. We decided that 14 was a good age for it, and we decided to bottle this whiskey at 14 years old. It's all American oak. It's all American oak. This Week of Peat. It's bottled at a slightly higher strength. It's bottled at 48.3, so it's not so full. But we're very lucky that it's a very delicate smokiness. I mean, I think the phenol level is somewhere around about 5 or 6 compared to some of the Islay malts, which could be up in the 30s.
Yeah.
So we're very lucky that we've still got that honeyedness, we've still got the vanilla, citrus, butterscotch, all these lovely flavours you get with Balvenie. But you do, when you nose it, you do get a very slight smokiness, and then when you taste it, You've still got that lovely honey note that Balvenie is noted for, but you've got that delicate smokiness in the background. So, so those who like sort of peaty whiskies and also like the Balvenie style of whiskey, the kind of Speyside style of whiskey, that sweet and fruity style, you've got a lovely combination there, I think, of that, just that delicate smokiness and that lovely Speyside style of whiskey.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I think it's great that it holds the character of Balvenie. One thing I've learned through my time with Balvenie and tasting quite a few of them is that you can tell when it's Balvenie. There is that distillery style, that honey, that sweetness, that maltiness, and with the use of peat, it's light enough that it still carries the Balvenie flavour through. I think it's incredible. There's a few comments coming up there about how much people are enjoying it, so that's great to see as well.
I hope so.
David, we're gonna hop over to the bar now for the cocktail. I mean, we could keep chatting forever, but we'll come back for a chat in a little bit. Thank you very much, David. We're going to hop from here through to Whiskey and Ailment with Lockie, I believe, who is going to be making us a little cocktail. Everyone should have their cocktail around. Lockie, how you doing? Oh, you're muted.
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it feels good to finally be back in the bar, trying to make drinks.
Back behind the bar. It's good. It's good to see you behind the bar. I know it's been a tough time in Melbourne at the moment, but it's good to see you're in the bar. It may not be open, but it feels like we're there with you.
Well, it felt good to put on a button-up shirt again for the first time in a while, and kind of get what we
put pants on and get behind the bar.
So I guess I'll just get going on. So I'll start.
Sure. What have you got for us?
Yeah, so I've got 2 cocktails. So everyone had the option of one of 2 drinks to showcase the Toast of American Oak, which we've all tasted already so far this evening. But I'm going to start with the Storied Pear. So the Storied Pear is a highball style drink, which was designed to kind of represent the fruit-driven style, fruit-driven drink that Balvenie is famous for. So I've had 2 different flavors that I look for in one, and this kind of citrusy orchard fruit characteristic that I look for is another. And so this is to represent that one. So pretty generous slog of that for this one.
Lovely.
We've got some Cocky Americano, a beautiful aperitif. And then we have a kumquat and lemon leaf cordial for just that kind of bright citrus character to bolster that up. And we've selected the pear soda from Strange Love here in Melbourne. I apologise, I'm very rusty behind the bar.
It's going great.
This cloudy pear soda from Strange Love, we chose this because it's so bright, it's not sweet, it's really dry. I thought it just worked really well with the spirit. So anyone who has one of these, just pour about half of the bottle into your highball.
Well, looks good.
A little bit of a stir. And that'll be all. I'm going to hand this one off to my friend Miranda. Woohoo! And I'll start on the other one. So the other cocktail we have is a toasted banana. This one was a really organic drink for us to work on. For me, when I look at Balvenie Spirit, as I said before, I always look for that honeyed kind of characteristic. And as I was tasting it before, I really kind of found that toasty brioche character you were talking about before, Rob. And if something that goes really well with honey, especially here in Australia, is very famous for that. And honey on toast is banana. So we had this Amaro that I worked on in January, which was a banana and orange Amaro. So I took banana, fresh banana, banana skins and bourbon flambéed banana skins, stuck it into some spirit with some blood orange, cara orange, and grapefruit, as well as some nutmeg and a few other things. I had that sitting away for a while, turned that into an Amaro, and then we got closed down. So I had loads of it, and it worked perfectly of any spirit. So I wanted to kind of create a really stiff banana, honey, and toast style drink. So we using the sweet toasted American. Use a bit of that. We found this fantastic Amontillado sherry. Worked really well for it. Also, the yeasty character of the Amontillado sherry is into that toasty brioche character that we were trying to showcase. And then we got some of the Amaro. The last thing will just be a little bar spoon of sugar.
Just a little touch there. This is the one I'm going to be drinking in a second. I've just nipped to the fridge to get it. Got a block of ice here as well. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, so we gave everyone the option of 2 drinks. Especially doing something in the middle of a tasting session. Something more refreshing might be preferred, or something more stiff might be preferred. Everyone, can choose different things.
Yeah, I think I usually go for the stiff option, which is why I've gone for this one. I love the name. I mean, a toast to banana, which is a great name.
Well, we had a bit of fun with the bottles as well when we were trying.
Yeah, I like the new artwork and the labels. It looks great. I always think with that, like you said there, with American oak, you get that like almost like candied banana. I think of it as like the little foam lolly bananas that you get.
Absolutely,
I love that.
We have an argument here at the bar whether they're called foam bananas or lolly bananas, and me having Scottish parents, that foam bananas for me always.
Lolly bananas.
Yeah.
No.
I think I said foam lolly bananas there, but I would never usually call it a lolly being from Scotland, but I think I've been here that I realise I need to say lolly for people to know what I'm talking about. And I saw that drink has just been taken off to the side as well. Miranda's got like, oh, so you got it back?
I've got it back now.
Well, I'm just pouring mine here as well, pouring it into the glass over my ice. That I had to hand chip my ice myself to get it into the glass. So
yeah,
very, very fancy here. And it smells incredible.
It's been a solid few weeks since I've tried this. So,
well, it's looking good from here. So it smells so good. So remind us what was in this one again.
So this was the sweet toast, the house-made orange and banana Amaro, and Amontillado sherry.
I've been drinking during the lockdown period. I got quite into sherry. I've been learning a lot about sherry, learning about sherry finishes and understanding the barrels and understanding the wines. So for me, instantly, that's what I'm getting in there. It's beautiful having that Amontillado. You get that slight saltiness from it, like that little touch that balances it out.
And it does help with that toasty character.
We're having a really distant in Melbourne.
We can just hear you, Miranda. We know you're there. You got a cocktail. Well, hopefully everyone's enjoying the cocktail at home as much as we are here. I mean, we're just having a great time doing this. This is great. Yeah. I feel like I'm sitting at the bar. From where the camera angle is, I feel like I'm sitting at the bar looking at you. So oh, it's great. Well, thank you so much, Lockie. I'm going to be sipping on this cocktail as we move to our next segment. But thank you so much, Lockie. The cocktails are beautiful.
Thanks for giving me a reason to get out of the house this evening.
No, happy to. Thank you for doing it as well. We appreciate it. Well, I'm going to keep sipping this, and I think we are going from here, from Whiskey and Ailment in Melbourne, to the Still House at Balvenie in Dufftown with James. Hopefully James is there. James, do we have you? Are you there? He's coming. Oh, there we go.
Hi, Ross. How are you?
Hello, we can hear you.
Enjoying your cocktail?
I'm having a great time, James. Thank you very much. We'll get some sent over to you guys at the distillery as well. I don't know if it would have made it in time, but we'll make sure. I'm sure Lockie won't mind knocking up a few more to send over to you guys.
But it's nearly midday, so that'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll get there today, but I don't know if the postal service is as good as that here. But we'll work on it. So tell us where are you, James? What's going on?
Okay, Ross. So just on a technical issue, it's quite noisy in here. So can you hear me? Okay.
I was worried about that, but we can hear you perfectly. We can't even hear. It's usually quite noisy in there, but we can't really hear the background noise.
Yeah, so I'm going to try not to shout at you because I can't hear myself, and I can't really hear you either because it's just the wonders of the mic seems to be able to capture unfortunately for you folks, my voice, but not all the sounds of the Still House. Ross, do you want me to talk our guests through this a little bit?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so this has always been the Balvenie Still House right from the start. It would have originally had one wash still and one spirit still. Now you can look in at 6 spirit stills and snuck around the side of here are 5 wash stills. You can probably, we're going to take a closer look in a minute, but you can see that underneath these stills there is space where the furnaces used to be. These would have been direct fired until the late 1950s when we shifted over to indirect steam heating, which is what our stills are powered by today. Balvenie is still quite a manual distillery, as you'd probably expect, as far as distillation is concerned. We will load up the stills more or less by hand, opening valves, closing valves. The steam has to be introduced to the stills by opening and closing valves. I'm going to take you down to have a look at the spirit safes. These will be very familiar pieces of old-fashioned equipment to you. But ours is still manually operated here at Balvenie. So here we've got the low wine. So this is coming from the first distillation. Of course, no cut needed there. We run that until there's very little alcohol left in the spirit. You can probably see that it gushes out a little bit. It's a little cloudy. We'll do the first distillation in about 5 or 6 hours because that's not the one that's going to capture all of the flavour. That's getting some of the water out of that beer, out of the wash. And then the second distillation is going to be a little slower. You can kind of see how it happens here. I'll take you to this safe. You can see we've got 3 bowls, and what we can do here is from the 2 stills, this is Spirit Still 1 and Spirit Still 2 that this is feeding, we can cut to the heart. So we've got 4 shots here. We've got the heart of the run coming here, and then we can cut away to the faints. And hopefully this heart of the run looks reasonably clear and clean. And we'll do this quite slowly for around about 10, 11, 12 hours. And the reason there's a variation on that time is it's not a computer-driven operation. The stillman today, it's Doug, and he's hiding away in that little room there. He will, every once in a while, pop out of his room, take a sample into the sample jar of what's coming from the spirit still. He'll look at the temperature. He'll look at the gravity of the spirit. He can also do a clear test as well, and that will allow him to work out when we're on spirit, and he then needs to come and cut that tap across from 4 shots to spirit or spirit back to faints. And that way, each stillman can make up their own mind about when's the right moment to cut. And we've even had sort of particularly fussy stillmen that will run a cut, not be happy with it, and we'll put the whole lot back through the still again to get that real sweet kind of hard of the run that helps to start the Balvenie spirit.
Really? Wow. So it is. I mean, it very much is still, like you said, it's not too much automated. It does come down to the stillman making the decision on when the spirit's ready and the heart of the spirit is ready, and it looks like what we want. It's quite incredible. James, can you tell us? There was a little comment that popped up about the stills and how beautiful they are, and I have to agree, they are some of the most beautiful stills. They look nicely polished as well. Can you tell us about the shape of the stills and where they came from? Maybe I quite like that little part of the story. Oh, are we back on me? Are we moving on? Is that me being told I'm moving on to the next segment? Oh, here we go.
Sorry, Ross. I'm just going to brief intermission. Hi, everybody. James has just dropped out, so I can see him coming back. Just to let you know, here he is. He's coming back. So
thanks, Joe. We got pretty far without any hiccups. So.
I think I went beyond the limits of the signal there. Sorry.
Oh, you went too far.
Wi-Fi in Dufton. We can't rely on it.
I know we're not there for the internet. I mean, it's the whiskey we want. We're not known for the internet in Dufton.
Okay, I'm leaving. Bye.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you very much. Hey, James, you're back. James, can you tell us? I find that the shape of the stills so interesting, and where the stills came from at the very beginning.
Yeah, sure, Ross. So William Grant's theory was that copper was expensive back then. It's expensive today. These cost close to a couple of £100,000 a go for a brand new still. And William didn't want to take a chance on something that he wasn't sure would work. So his idea was to buy second-hand equipment for Balvenie, just as the same as they did for Glenfiddich. And so Balvenie, he sourced a wash still from Loughboullin and a spirit still from a distillery called Glenalban, which was in Inverness, which closed in the 1980s. And from the pictures that I've seen, both of them had an element of the boil ball in them. And what we've done over the years, as we got to work with our stills and work out the kind of spirit that we want to come from them, is to increase the boil ball, a little bit. And we've kind of really come to focus upon the shape that we purchased from Glenalban, if you like. And now all our stills, the wash stills and the spirit stills, are pretty much the same size and shape. There's a little variation in size between wash and spirit, but they're pretty much identical. You have to look very closely to see any kind of differences between them. And from the conversations that I've had with David Stewart and with Ian MacDonald and Dennis McBain, the coppersmith, they all kind of focus quite upon the boil ball being important in creating that sort of light, fruity characteristic of Balvenie, the reflux operation that will happen in there, the spirit, the vapors struggle to get out of the boil ball. They're pulled back down again, which means they get lighter, they have more copper contact, we get more flavor, more characteristics, more character, should I say, into the spirit. And if when you kind of travel around Speyside and you see a distillery that does that kind of classic Speyside light, sweet, sort of fruity spirit, with which Balvenie is a brilliant example, you see these kind of stills oftentimes. We would, until the 50s, have had worm tubs for condensing. But as you probably know, as we know, worm tubs tend to create quite a heavy sulfury kind of spirit, and so we swapped those over for Shallon tube condensers, which again help to give you that lightness that it's going to work so well once we pop it into an American oak cask or a European oak cask.
Yeah, so it's a big part of how it creates the style of what Balvenie is and the character of Balvenie. It's interesting to think we usually say 70% of the flavour of a whiskey comes from the barrel it's aged in, but the other 30% is everything before that, and a big part of that being the shape of the stills. And maybe, James, you can maybe help us with a couple of questions that just came in there. One being, we just use the hearts for when we're going into barrel, but how does the cut affect the flavour of the whiskey? When you change the cut points, what's happening? It's partly to do that reflux, but James, can you give us a bit of your technical wizardry with that?
Was that a question for me, Ross?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. How the cut points affect the end flavour of the whiskey?
Yeah. Sure. Well, again, being conscious of all the expertise that's around me, I'll give it a go. once you start the distillation process, once you start to vaporize the liquid, what you're going to get is certain types of alcohol, certain flavor congeners. They're gonna boil, if you like, or evaporate at different periods, at different temperatures. So what you can do then is you can separate out that liquid as it comes back into spirit. So what we'll find is that we cut Balvenie between 74% ABV and 64%. My understanding is that the higher end of the cut, you get the lighter, sort of more delicate sort of characteristics of a spirit. If you are interested in the sort of more meatier, often a peated whiskey distillery, if you like, we'll do the cut a bit lower, because actually the phenols, those heavier sort of congeners, come through a little bit later in the cut. So yeah, the cut points are pretty important on not just the kind of strength of alcohol you're going to get, but the characteristics. And that's why a good stillman will move it ever so slightly to just get it just right. And you know, in times gone past, a skilled stillman will have even knows that spirit and knew when they were getting the right kind of characteristics. And you know, if we had David here as a stillman, if we had Kelsey here as a well, we have to state, we'll change the nomenclature there to stillwoman. They would be nosing that spirit and going, no, this is the right cut point. Now I'll take it, because you can kind of tell that we've got all those kind of characteristics. But I've seen sort of graphs and charts and stuff that will tell you what different alcohols are coming through at different boiling points and at different timings. It's all, there's a chemistry behind it that I think is, you know, 85% understood perhaps, but that little bit we don't know is still the magic, I think, of whiskey making.
Yeah, I have to agree, and that was a great explanation as well. So the cut points do affect the flavour of the whiskey, and everyone will make their cut points slightly different based on what they want. But there's so much chemistry behind it. But I really like the fact that there's still a little bit that we don't know what it is. There's still the magic in whiskey. We might have lots more science than we did a couple of hundred years ago, but there's still that little bit of the chemistry that we don't exactly know what it is, and it keeps the magic in whiskey. Which is great. Thank you very much, James, for showing us the still house. It looks amazing. It's making me homesick getting around the distillery here. I want to be there as well. But thank you very much, James, and we'll catch up with you again shortly. I think next up we're going to be moving on to our newest release in the Stories range. We're going to be tasting our new 19-year-old. The Edge of Burnhead Wood. I have to say, I think this is my favourite name out of our whiskies. The whole Stories range it's all about this story and everything, including the name, the packaging, which on the packets you'll have out there, you'll see the artwork that is there. We had an incredible artist, Andy Lovell, who created these, and it's all about telling the story and getting in depth into it. And the Edge of Burnhead Wood, I think it's one of those, the name that just, I don't know, it conjures these really amazing images, which we're about to see. So without me telling you more about it, if you'd like to pour yourself your dram of our new 19-year-old, the Balvenie, The Edge of Burnhead Wood, we're going to watch a quick little video, which features Gemma, our driver, and we have Dave Stewart, not to be confused with David Stewart. So Gemma, if you'd like to play the video and pour yourself a dram, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
It must be quite surprising now to actually see these whiskies from these trials that you had been so involved in.
Time moves on, and then 15, 20 years later, it all catches up with you. It's nice to be at the beginning and at the end.
Right back in the early 2000s, this was a project that you were involved in, right from the start.
Yeah. No, you had a lot of industry knowledge. That was good.
And then he relied on your expertise and knowledge of the estate.
Yeah, we see the road coming up, and the path continues up here, joins this track and goes over the hill.
That's this. This is out onto the edge of Burnhead Wood here now, and we're onto Heather Hill, and this is where we selected heather from along here.
A whole field of heather, but the heather's all kind of lovely browns and soft greens, mossy colour. It's pretty incredible to think that the waters run from these hills and affected the flavour of that whisky in the glass, and also this heather dried in the kiln.
It don't hurt anymore. All the stills have run dry. Is that right?
Yep.
And Dave's to come down with a bogey load of heather and we throw it on the fire. Oof, gone. To get the benefit, we'll like try something else. So that we're dumping the heather down, and that'll stop it from flaring up.
So we're upstairs in the malt loft now, where we have a few heaps of barley just waiting to be malted.
So I would reckon there's 250 tonne of barley there.
So much tradition and heritage here, but a lot of experimentation as well.
These trials were driven by you when you were distillery manager here.
Being able to take stuff off the estate from both the heather and the barley point of view, and using the estate back in 2000 at a point where we got away with murder. It was completely different to what we normally did.
Yep.
With the stories the last few years, it's been really inspirational for everyone at Balvenie. The work that you did back then has really inspired new generation.
It was outrageous that we got away with it, but we were delighted we did. For me, it has huge potential to really say something about Balvenie.
No use in denying, I wanted to cry the day they said it was true. I just can't get it out of my mind. I can't believe it, can you?
That's great. I love watching that video. I poured myself my dram here, having a little smell of it, and just watching that and seeing the images of the heather coming from the hill and looking beautiful and purple there, coming into the distillery, and then our barley being smoked with that heather, and just knowing all that process that's gone into it and seeing it happen, it's incredible. Yeah, Gemma, thank you very much for making that video and showing us it. It looks incredible. And now, while we're drinking our whiskey, we are hopefully going to go to the edge of Burnhead Wood. If everything goes smoothly and according to plan, we'll be joining Charlie, our other distillery ambassador. Here he comes. Oh, here we are. It's oh yeah, it's pretty good. We're looking at the gimbal that you've got to hold it all straight. You're muted as well, Charlie. I don't know if you can unmute yourself. And I don't know if you're rolling down the hill, Charlie. I hope you're not. It's jumping around a little bit. We're getting fleeting glimpses of beautiful scenery, though. Oh, that's better, Charlie. I don't know.
Can you hear me there, Ross?
I can hear you now. Yes, we've got you. It looked like you were rolling down the hill there. Yeah. Are you okay?
I've got you. No, that was just me. So I was struggling with the technology there, so I decided to stamp on the gimbal.
Great. Well, see, whatever you did, it's worked. Charlie, where are you? Tell us what's going on round about you.
So literally, having watched that beautiful video with you, I was given the job to actually hike up the hill today and give you a view of literally the edge of Burnhead Wood. So that is where I'm standing at this moment. What I did want to show you first is, I mean, it is a stunning day in Scotland today. You can see this view just down the valley here. So that is about there. That is Glenfiddich Distillery that we can see just down the valley. Balvenie is kind of a bit more hidden to this side here. But you know, wonderful views up here. And I mean, I don't know if you can see, but there's literally no no clouds in the sky barely. I'm getting heat stroke up here today, Ross.
It is beautiful. It looks absolutely amazing. And you were saying, you got the job of hiking up the hill, which we appreciate. Thank you very much, Charlie, for going up the hill. There's a little bit of the story, which I suppose you'll have felt Dave Stewart's pain that was in the video there, where the first lot of heather that he brought down kind of just went up in a puff of smoke, and then had to go back up the hill and get some more to do the next one. So is it a bit of a walk up there?
It's I'll see if I can turn this round. Hello.
Oh, there you are.
It's a fair old trek up the hill. I mean, it's taken me about half an hour. But I think when Dave came up to do it, he did bring up his. There was a great word in that video that you might have missed, actually, a great Scottish word. He brought up his trailer and bogey. So that's basically his bogey. So his bogey is basically his cart. So his cart that's attached to his tractor. So he had a bit of help, which is quite good.
That's great. Yeah, I don't know if anyone would have noticed that, having the bogey in there, but I'm glad you explained that. I even for myself, I mean, well, being from Glasgow, sometimes when I'm up at the distillery, there's a few words that I have to find out what they are. There's always a few flying around.
Yeah, the good old bogey. But I mean, I'll give you a bit of a view up here because it's stunning. We'll go around and have a walk up to the edge of the wood here. So you're getting a glimpse of the field of heather referenced in the video there. And at this point of the year, it is literally the perfect time to be coming and doing broadcasts from up here because the heather is in full bloom at this point.
Yeah,
so you're seeing this lovely,
a beautiful purple hue.
Yeah, and the trees lovely in the background there, a lovely green colour.
Look at that. That's amazing. There is a certain angle where the light comes in just right there. You really see that purple of the heather, the beautiful green trees, the blue sky. I think, there's a few comments coming in about the flavours of the whiskey. I think looking at this view of where a very integral and very unique ingredient in the whiskey, where the heather comes from, I think as we're looking at this, I think it really makes a difference to enjoying this whiskey. Get a little close up of the heather there.
There we go. And I have to say, like, I saw people in the comments earlier wishing that we had smelly vision. And this is another part. This heather actually has a scent to it here. I mean, I can describe it as like a sort of almost sweet note and quite earthy as well. It smells lovely.
Yeah, I can almost. It's very evocative for me of like memories of being back in Scotland, and I remember that kind of smell. I always think of it as, it's funny because I think when I'm smelling the whiskey, I think of it as a purple smell. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but I think it's something to do with that earthiness and that sweetness. But seeing the heather there makes such a difference to drinking it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, whether the discussion will continue after this, but whether these, this heather we're picking this up in the whiskey, that's up for debate, I guess. So it's a very interesting whiskey. I'd say, it's a historically relevant whiskey, and it's a very rare one. So I hope everyone's enjoying having a wee dram of it.
Yeah, great. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for making the hike up there. We really appreciate it. I imagine everyone watching in Australia is wishing they were there with you right now, with a whiskey as well. We really appreciate it.
It's funny you say that, because I thought, I've hiked all the way up this hill. I better reward myself with a little something. So I have brought up a wee bottle here.
Oh, nice.
And
little cheeky bottle,
a wee glass. Slàinte, everyone. Slàinte, Australia.
Cheers, Charlie. Slàinte. Thank you very much. I imagine there's usually just a bottle sitting in the heather there anyway. There's one there for any passers-by that might want to stop for a dram.
We leave it here the whole time just for people to have a wee try of this delicious whiskey. Absolutely.
So when it all runs out, there's a bottle sitting in the heather there. All right. Thank you very much, Charlie. Thank you. Thank you so much, Charlie.
See you later.
Slanger. Cheers. Thank you. And I think now we're going to have a little bit more of a chat about this whiskey because it's so new, it's brand new, it's very interesting. I'm sure there are some questions around this whiskey. There's a lot of tradition in how we make this whiskey. There's also a lot of innovation and some unusual parts to it with the heather aspect. So I thought it might be quite good for us to just have a little chat about it. I'm going to invite three of my colleagues. I'm quite proud to call them colleagues with the people we've got here. So we've got Gemma, our global ambassador and driver. We'll have Kelsey back again and David back again. Thanks for coming back.
Okay. Thanks, Ross. Well done.
I think it's going pretty well so far. We're doing all right. So I thought it'd be good just having a chat with you guys about this whiskey and how unique it is. You know, the two main things for me is that this is our first whiskey that we've made that's completely 100% Balvenie estate. So it's barley grown on our own farms. It's malted on our own malting floor, obviously distilled and matured and bottled, everything on site. So it's all Balvenie. And the second part being the malt being smoked with heather. You know, two pretty big points. I'm just curious to see, I don't know, what you guys think of the whiskey and those two things. Who wants to go first? David, you go first, please.
I'm probably the only one here that actually saw the new spirit when it came off the stills, and it was certainly different, to be fair, from what we generally distill. But it's got. Someone mentioned coconut. I saw earlier, and I would agree with that. It's got a coconut sort of flavour. It's got the typical Balvenie flavours of the honey and the vanilla, but it's just got that extra dimension to it. So it's a little bit more, flavours to it than maybe a normal Balvenie matured in American oak barrels. Yeah, so the coconut, honey, vanilla, maple syrup, butterscotch, brown sugar, all these lovely sort of flavours, and maybe just fractionally richer than you might expect just from a normal distillation aged in American barrels for 9 years. And of course, it's bottled at 48.7, so it's a bit stronger than the normal. I've added a little touch of water, a little touch of wine, which just opens it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Kelsey, what something to that, or Gemma?
Yeah, Kelsey, what's your thoughts?
No, I completely agree, and I think Charlie made a great point as well, just about the debate on how much the heather is adding. For us, there's definitely so much richness to it. It's undoubted that the heather is adding something to it. But again, we do so much in terms of research and experimenting, and we talk so much about how much we know about whiskey. There is still so much that we don't. And I love all of the trials of work that we do into different finishing and different innovations to actually be able to pinpoint those flavours so that we can pull out different coconut, vanilla, honey notes in the spirit, and actually tracing that back to an individual barrel and a method of finishing or a production process. It is really amazing.
Yeah. I think the flavours in there, everything that you've just said there, they're quite apparent. And Gemma, from your point of view, I mean, making that video that you made there and hearing so much of the story from Dave Stewart as well, it just seems like an amazing experience making that video.
It really was. It was quite an adventure, and actually Dave and I got stuck in the truck on the way up to make the video. It was we have a podcast series as part of the Stories range, and I'm laughing because Kelsey had a nice dig at me about my driving in Kentucky, and I know you've all been in the car with me at some point.
I thought we were getting cut off when that happened.
We were driving up the hill to Burnhead Wood, and we actually got the truck stuck, and it was a podcast that we were recording. So each of the Stories whiskies has a podcast where you can hear the people from the distillery who created these whiskies have a bit of a chat about them. So yeah, Dave and I, we were recording and we got stuck, and we had to get out, and there was 4 of us. We had to push the truck out of the mud to get up there. So yeah, the experience of making the video was it was a lot of fun. And we did that back in February, actually. So just a few weeks before we went into lockdown. So for me, I have such fond memories of being here in that time, and you can see that in the video. The heather is really quite brown, lovely like brown tones and hues, which now it's completely different, still blooming in purple. So I think that's something that I love being here at Balvenie, is we're so connected to the seasons here, and having the barley fields and growing a portion of our own barley. Hopefully, I think we can ask James or Charlie to pop out. We've not harvested yet. The harvest's kind of going on right now. So we still have a beautiful golden barley field. So we can ask James or Charlie to pop down and have a wee look in the barley field once one of them comes back.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we'd love to see
show
that.
You some beautiful golden fields. Right now, Speyside, driving around, all the fields are so golden and beautiful.
Yeah,
best time of year to visit.
Yeah, it really is. I always end up back in Scotland for Christmas, so I'm always there in winter. I've decided though, after all of this we were doing with the Edge of Burnhead Wood, next year I'm coming in summer. Hoping everything goes well, I'll be there in summer to see you guys. The other thing, David, maybe coming back to you as well, the conversation I've had with a few people about this whiskey, and coming back to that, the two sides of like tradition and innovation. It's something quite innovative with this, but it's also something that we did 19 years ago. So although these whiskies are coming out now, and innovation in whiskey is a very big thing, it's something that's happened at Balvenie for a long time. I think we're seen as quite traditional in our style of Balvenie and how we make it. But you'll have seen lots of different trials over 58 years. You'll have seen you've seen a lot of different things. What kind of trials and different things have you seen?
Yeah, we held these spirit quality meetings back a number of years ago, where the two distillery managers from Girvan and Dufferin were there. Our production director was there, and most of our finishes have been cask finishes, but we wanted to do something right at the very beginning, knowing that you're going to have to wait many years. And this occasion it was 14 years, and another 19 years, and one to come, which is 26 years. So yeah, we wanted to do one or two things right at the very start, rather than using cask to finish our whiskies. So we've got this dark barley, which is a whiskey we're still going to taste, the heather trials, the peat. I thought we'd make the peat. That's probably about the three things that we've done in the last sort of 15, 20, 25 years, really. Yeah. And once these whiskies are, once it's gone, really. So, but maybe, with Kelsey around, maybe she'll decide to do one or two other things, right at the very beginning. We've done the same at Glenfiddich. Glenfiddich used peated malt right at the very start as well. I think it started at the same time as Balvenie, 2001, 2002. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting. You mentioned
more down at our lower distillery, Ailsa Bay, because it's a new distillery, and we've tried different things there. I think we make 4 different types of spirit there, but with Balvenie, we need to be pretty, careful that it's, we're producing the same quality, and just occasionally we'll try something different.
Yeah, it's Balvenie on the bottle, and it's your name on the bottle as well. So it's coming out that we want it to be exactly what you want it to be. It's interesting what you said there, how with cask finishing, it's a relatively short time to wait. Whiskey is always a long time to wait, but with cask finishing, it's a relatively short time. Whether it's 12 weeks with a sweet toast of American oak, or up to 11 months with a double wood, it's quite short. But innovating at the beginning is such a long time to wait. Kelsey, David mentioned there, what is there things that you've got in mind that you might like to do sometime in the future? You're at the beginning of a career that, could and hopefully will go as long as David's. Is there things you've got in mind that you thought would be cool to do?
Absolutely. For me, that's one of the most exciting parts of distilling whiskey maturation is that we can push and pull all of these different levers and create such unique tasting spirits each and every time. So absolutely, we have lots of different innovation meetings. We want to trial so many different things. So we definitely have lots of trials, innovations bubbling away in the background. And as you say, in the next few years, hopefully you'll see a few of them coming to you.
Well, yeah, but you're not going to tell us what they are you?
Maybe an after party.
Yeah, cool. We'll save that for the after party. That's good. Yeah, great. I mean, Gemma, do you want to add anything else, or your thoughts around this whiskey, or?
I just want to say a little cheers. There's so much love for Denver's glass in the beginning, and everyone giving Denver shout outs, and I know Denver's watching. So Denver just recently sent me a traveler's mug. So I put my Burnhead Wood in here, which I'm having a sip of. And it's fitting having this here and sipping this whiskey here. I'm sitting in the tasting room at Balvenie. And unfortunately, this room has been so quiet over the last few months. I mean, the most exciting, obviously with the virus and no visitors around, the most exciting thing to happen in the grounds at Balvenie is the new duck family that's moved in. But we've not had visitors here since early March, which is the longest time in quite a while. And I'm sitting here at the table. This is our tasting room. I'm at the table where normally at the end of the tour you would come and sit and enjoy a dram with either Charlie or James or distillery ambassadors. And this room actually has quite a history, because this was once upon a time the distillery manager's office. So this was where the head brewer, who was the top guy here on site, this was where he was based. And if you turned up to work first thing in the morning back in the day, say if we go back to Balvenie 40 years ago, you would see a line of the distillery workers outside this door, and they'd be waiting with a cup in hand. And when they got to the front of the line, that cup would be filled with some cleric, some new make spirit by the head brewer. So everyone came here. It was the dramming station. Everyone came here for their dram before they went out, and you would have kind of your dram here with the head brewer. So it's fitting now that this is our tasting room. We don't have any dramming at Balvenie anymore. Everyone gets a bottle of Balvenie to take home with them at the end of the month. But it's fitting that the tasting room is now where the dramming used to happen, and it's nice to share this dram with everybody from here.
Yeah, it's a different version of dramming that happens in that room now.
Yes.
And that's also the kind of glass. Next time, if you're going up to the edge of Burnhead Wood, that's the kind of vessel you want to be drinking out up there. It's the one that's going to stand the journey.
That's it.
Great. Well, I think we could sit here chatting about this whiskey for hours and hours. We're running a little bit over time. Hopefully, no one minds too much. We do have one more whiskey to do. But thank you guys for sitting and having a chat.
Wait, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt again. Charlie is now, I can see, in the barley field. So shall we just nip to Charlie really quickly to have a look at some golden barley?
Yeah, let's go Charlie, and then we'll go into the last whiskey. Yeah, let's do that.
Right. I'll add him in. Here we go, Charlie.
Here we go.
Well, you get around, Charlie. You're getting around.
I do. I just wanted to show you this, the view of the barley field here, and it's ridiculous timing actually. I've just passed the Wiseman family coming up the track here. So these are the chaps that actually farm Balvenie Farm for us, and they're getting ready to harvest this field within the next couple of hours. So we've hit perfect timing.
Wow. So we caught it just before it all goes.
Yeah, it's gonna be harvested today, or today into the night, because it's going to take them quite a while to cut this field. It's pretty large going down the valley there, and you can kind of just see in the distance there. Balvenie Distillery is right there. You can see the maltings building just in the distance. So this barley is looking absolutely perfect at the moment, and this will be consumed as a Balvenie in the future.
Wow. It's quite amazing to think that whole field will end up in our glass at some point in 12, 20, 30 years' time. Who knows?
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. It's great. Mesmerized. I could just sit and look at that for ages.
Yeah, I know it's a lovely sight, especially on a day like today. Perfect day in Scotland.
Do you have another bottle of Balvenie stashed in the barley there?
I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I could probably find one.
There's always some close to hand when you're near the distillery. You can always find some.
Oh, you know me, Ross. I've got stuff stashed everywhere. You know?
That's right. That's why we get along. You've always got some whiskey around.
All right, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for making the journey. Oh, great. It does look beautiful there. It looks amazing.
So lucky with the weather.
I know. It's that one day of Scottish sun that we get occasionally. Oh no, yeah, beautiful. Dufftown, a beautiful day. Perfect. All right, will we do our last whiskey? Right, we're going to move on to our final whiskey of the night. Our final whiskey in this tasting. You're more than welcome to have more whiskies afterwards. If you've got a little bottle of Double Wood on the shelf, you can have another one afterwards. But we're going to move on to the 26, A Day of Dark Barley, and we're going to hear a little bit from one of the characters in the story, one of the main characters of this story, and then we come back to me, and I'm going to tell you a bit more about the story of this whiskey, but I like to talk more about the characters because they're very important. The people at the distillery are so important to us at Balvenie. We're going to start off, if you want to pour your dram, sit back, relax. We're going to hear from Robbie Gormley, who's our head maltman for over 45 years. And he wrote a little poem for his retiral. He didn't feel like doing a speech for his retiral. So he wrote a poem, and we're about to hear from Robbie doing his poem. So I think Gemma's got it lined up. So grab a whiskey, and we'll hear from Robbie. Let's go.
I was working away with the radio on, singing along to a wheel Kent song, throwing down my very last step, when I heard the sound of shuffling feet. Well, when I looked up, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But I'm telling you now that I'm nae leeing. There, going ben the loft, was the green lady, and on her shoulder, the elusive malt monkey. Well, she could see she gave me quite a scare, as she slowly came forward and sat down in the stair, and the monkey flickered her boot and played with her hair. Then she started to speak, with her voice so low, that to go and turn off the radio. She said, "Oh, Robbie, we heard it was time for you to go, so we thought we'd just come down to say cheerio. You see, we've watched you all these years, throwing down steeps and pulling out flares, teaching others how to use a shield, for a while there even was a Quinas wheel. We've heard you tell stories about us too, to loads of visitors and even to film crew. Ah, well, it's no time for us to disappear, but we'll be back another year." And as they walked off down the loft, Monkey looked back for one last peek, and I carried on through and down the steep. But it's a night that lie was bide with me, my very last night shift at the Balvenie.
Brilliant. That was Robbie Gormley, our head maltman. Very talented guy. He worked on our malting floor for 45 years, and he did a great job malting our barley and training everyone else that came in there. But he's such a creative person. You may have noticed in the video earlier on, Robbie was singing, which I think Gemma was very lucky to catch on camera. And then at the end of the video, it's actually Gemma and Robbie singing together, another little song that Robbie made up. So Robbie, an incredible guy, has done such a great job at Balvenie over the years. And as we're moving on to our last whiskey, the 26-year-old, A Day of Dark Barley, I'd like to tell you a bit about the story of how this whiskey was made, because when we're talking about stories at Balvenie, and I've mentioned how important they are to us, they're the lifeblood of Balvenie. Our crafts are how we make our whiskey, and they're so important to us. But the stories are how things are passed along. And it's so important how we pass along this knowledge and experience and feeling and passion that are passed through stories. So I want to tell you the story behind this whiskey. But to tell you this story properly, I need to introduce one of the other main characters. So we've had Robbie Gormley, our maltman. We also have a man called Brian Webster. So Brian Webster is an incredibly interesting person. I know some of the people that are on tonight have met Brian and will be able to confirm this. He knows how to tell a story, and he has very many of them. So to put this in context, Brian has told me many stories, but one of my favourite ones about Brian, just to let you know the quality of his storytelling is so incredible. He once told me about the time that he met the Queen. And I mean, you can make up for yourselves whether this is a true story or not. I don't think it matters when it comes down to it. David Stewart, that we've been chatting to, has met the Queen when he got his MBE. Brian has a story about meeting the Queen, which is a little bit different. And Brian went out one afternoon from the distillery and went for a walk. And he took a little hip flask, or maybe a couple of hip flasks in his pocket, and went for a walk over the hills. Had a couple of drams along the way, and he's having a great time, having a walk, enjoying himself. And maybe a few hours into the walk, a fog starts to set in, and he's walking through the fog, and he can't really see where he's going, but he keeps marching on, has a little dram, and keeps going anyway. And I remember when Brian told me this, he said the fog was so thick you could cut it like pea soup. And I remember when he said that, I thought, what does that mean? I thought that's amazing. Like, I painted a picture, but I don't know if it's either pea soup or you can cut it with a knife. I don't know if you cut pea soup with a knife. Anyway, that was how he's painting this picture. And eventually he keeps going, having a dram, and eventually the fog lifts. And you may know the Queen has a residence not all that far away from the distillery, Balmoral. And he realised when the fog lifted that the Queen was sitting on the bench in her grounds. This would have been years and years ago. You know, the young princes playing around in the garden as well. And he realised where he was and who he was looking at. He's got his whiskey in his hand, and what do you do when you bump into the Queen unexpectedly when you're out for a walk in the fog with a whiskey? So Brian said to me, he said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said he just gave her a nod, a little bow, and he said, "Hello, how you doing?" And I don't know what she said back, but he said, "Hello, how are you?" And then just carried on with his walk. And that was when Brian met the Queen. And I'll never forget that story when he told me, because the picture he painted was incredible. But that gives you an idea of Brian. But anyway, back to the whiskey we're drinking now. So a day of dark barley was one specific day back at the beginning when this whiskey was first starting to be made. And Brian was working at the distillery. He was working in the mash house. He was mashman at the time. Robbie was also there. And Brian's in there doing his thing, and the phone rings. And Brian picks up the phone, and he's got a phone call from the lorry driver or the truck driver that brings in the barley to the distillery. So we have a certain portion that is grown on our own farm. We have some that we bring in as well. So he phones up Brian. He says, "All right, Brian, how you doing? What's going on?" And I said, "Doing good. Yeah, just I'm in the mash house, mashing in, doing what I do." He said, "Well, Brian, I'm just over the hill. I'm not too far away. Put the kettle on. I'd like to stop for a cup of tea. I've got a special delivery for you." And he hangs up the phone. Brian hangs up the phone, and he thinks, what do you mean he's got a special delivery? I mean, he's a guy that comes every few days, every week, with a batch of barley. It's the same every week. So he's thinking, he's just pulling my leg or something. But he gets the kettle on anyway. So he waits on the guy. He sees the truck coming up the road. The truck driver jumps out, and it's a different kind of truck. There's something that looks unusual about this. The driver jumps out, and Brian's got his cup of tea ready for him. So they stand there, and he said, "Well, got something a bit special for you." And Brian's like, "Okay, let's see what you've got." So he pulls it out, and the truck's full of these 20-kilogram big white bags of barley. And he's still like, "Okay, this doesn't look all that unusual, maybe a little bit different." So Robbie comes out as well, and he grabs one of the bags to have a look at the barley. It looks a little bit different, but we're not sure what it is yet. Robbie puts the bag down in front of him, tears open the top of the bag, and Robbie's seen a lot of barley in his time, takes a scoop of the barley out, and he looks at it, and the colour of our barley, as we've just seen that beautiful golden colour you have of the barley, this was more like the colour of coffee beans, really, really dark roasted barley. And Robbie'd seen this before. Occasionally things don't go to plan on the malting floor as well, and things can be over roasted, and it ends up looking like that. So Robbie's looking at it, he has a smell of it. It's very brittle in his hands, so when he does this with it, it crumbles up, and as he smells it, he said it smelled like dry roasted peanuts. So they realised they've got some roasted barley. They realised that this has been ordered in. There was a plan around at the time. They just hadn't realised at the time. And they have to get all these bags of barley out. So the truck driver's finished his tea by this point. He's like, all right, guys, we need to get the barley out. I've got other jobs to go and do. So Robbie and Brian take all the bags of barley out and they leave them. They're all out in the courtyard where James was showing us earlier on. And they're sitting out there when the rain starts to come down. So if you look at the pack that you have, you'll see the artwork for this is actually of the day, and you'll see the rain coming down in the middle of the courtyard with all the bags of barley sitting there. And Robbie and Brian know that if this barley gets wet, it's kind of ruined. So they can't have this. So Robbie and Brian run around the whole distillery, everyone that's working there. This rain's starting to come down. I mean, it rains quite often in Scotland, and for anyone that's been there, you know, it can come down pretty hard. So it's starting to get heavier. They get everyone in the distillery, everyone from every part of the distillery, and say, guys, we need your help. Everyone has to chip in on this. Everyone's outside in the pouring rain, in the cold and the wet, grabbing these big 20-kilogram bags of barley over the shoulder into the malting floor to keep it dry, but not just into the malting floor, upstairs to the malt loft where James started us off earlier on. So everyone in the distillery is getting wet, carrying these heavy bags up the stairs, leaving it there, and everyone chipped in to get it done. And the barley sat there for a little while. I just always really like that everyone chipped in for this. You know, it was a whole distillery, everyone that was there that helped out. And I suppose for the day of dark barley, that day itself, I imagine it probably had mixed reviews from the people that worked at the distillery, because not everyone wanted to be out in the pouring rain carrying big heavy bags of barley. But it all sat there for a few months, and then Brian had the job of mashing in the barley. So it's all been ground down into the grist, and it's been mixed in with our warm water to make the wort. And Brian described this as, I mean, usually being a kind of almost brown, golden, translucent colour when it's mixed in. This time, it was like treacle. It was really, really dark. It was like nothing they'd seen before. So he had people coming up from Glenfiddich, people coming down. They wanted to see what this looked like because they'd never seen it before and hadn't been done. And they went on, you know, did the rest of the process. They distill it, and obviously the colour comes out of it when we distill it, so it doesn't end up as dark afterwards. And then after all this, the New Make Spirit goes into American oak barrels, first fill American oak barrels, sorry, ex-bourbon, first fill American oak, and it stays in there for 26 years. So I think what I really love about this whiskey that sat for 26 years in the barrel, it was that first day that all this stuff happened, everyone was involved, Brian and Robbie were making things happen and everyone chipped in. It may have been aged for 26 years in the barrel, but it comes down to one day that's what started the story. You know, these stories can start from anywhere. And over 26 years, it's picked up some incredible flavour. And I think, well, for me, the story makes it great. The story gives it the background, and we understand where it came from and the thought process behind it. When it comes down to it, it's an absolutely cracking whiskey. I absolutely love this whiskey. I don't get to have it all that often myself. And I think as I'm tasting this, as our last whiskey, and when we're getting close to the end here, I wouldn't mind inviting everyone back in to join in a whiskey. Gemma, as a driver, if you can even throw everyone in there, throw us all in. Why not? And everyone's got a whiskey.
Working on it. I actually have set up a picture of Brian and Robbie. I felt like I didn't want to interrupt you, Ross, in case something went wrong. But if everyone bears with us for a few seconds, I can share my screen.
I think everyone would love to see the two of them together.
Brian and Robbie up. There we go.
There we are. There's Brian with his hat on. And over there, what a pair. Brilliant. Standing outside the malt store with a bottle.
Standing in the middle of the courtyard where exactly we had that delivery of barley, and they had to rescue every single bag from the rain. So
amazing.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rest of you guys will be able to confirm Brian's storytelling ability and how he tells a story.
For sure.
Oh, brilliant. I'm thoroughly enjoying this whiskey. I see, James, you're back sitting down inside now. Thanks for taking us all around there.
No problem. It's been great fun.
Yeah, brilliant. Great.
This whiskey, Ross, was released in 2006 as the Balvenie roasted malt. So we bottled some of this in 2006 as the Balvenie roasted malt.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yes.
We kept some back, 50 casks, I think we kept back. So this current one is bottled as a single barrel. So it's got the same strength, it's 47.8, the same strength as our current single barrel. So we bottle one barrel at a time for this latest release. So I think it's got a bit more of the kind of, some people say it's kind of oakiness, it's got maybe a touch of smokiness to it, just extra layers of depth to it really from the dark barley. So it's a lovely whiskey, yeah. And once it's gone again. Oops, we might see next year out, and then that might be it. It's a lovely whiskey.
That's it. That's one batch of it. One batch, but in two releases, like you said. For anyone that might be lucky enough to have a bottle of the 14-year-old roasted malt, it'd be quite interesting to see the two of them together from the same mash, been aged different lengths of time.
That'd be a fascinating
we compared them both. They're both similar in style, but obviously, 12 years on, it's good. It's a little bit smoother and richer and slightly more oak notes than the 26-year-old compared to the 14-year-old. But yeah, that certainly been an influence on the whiskey. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I absolutely love this one.
It's really, for me, like such a piece of Balvenie history, right? We only filled 100 casks, as you said, back then in 1992. So it is really a piece of history in the glass that we have here.
That's it.
Yes.
Totally agree. And what a special experience to be able to share with you guys. I'd love to take this opportunity personally to say thank you so much from Whiskey and Almond and from all of us here. This has been an absolutely epic event. We've been getting such positive feedback even while the event has been happening, and just such a to be a part of. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody who attended tonight, to David, Ross, Kelsey, Gemma, James, and Charlie. Thank you for the bottom of that. It has been.
Thanks, Miranda. I want to say, for everyone watching and for all of you guys, this is the very first time that we have ever done this, broadcasted live this way from Balvenie. So thank you all for joining us. And Ross, thank you for setting this up. It's absolutely incredible. Miranda, seriously, to partner with you guys and to work with you, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity and bringing this great community of people together. It's been incredible watching all the comments come in. So I've been the one flashing them up on screen. There's been a lot of questions which I have written down, and I think we're probably quite over time. I don't know. I've got them saved. So if we go onto the Zoom, we can answer some of the questions that have been coming through. I didn't want to keep flashing up questions. I thought it was a bit of a distraction as you were chatting, but we'll tackle the questions over in the Zoom. And then finally, huge thank you to James and Charlie, who've been out there in the field, literally in the field, with our limited Wi-Fi here on site, and you've done an incredible job. And Kelsey, David, such an amazing honour. I'm still blown away that, David, after 58 years, you're here joining us throughout these Zoom tastings and virtual tastings, and it's really such an honour. So, yeah, thank you to everyone. Amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Yeah, well, I just could reiterate that. Thank you to all of you for being part of this. It's been amazing. It's been a long process, and everyone's worked so hard on it. It's been great to see it come together, and at the end of it, seeing that it went pretty well. I had a great time doing it. I hope everyone else did. Hope everyone watching did. But maybe to finish off, before a little toast, since we're all here. But before a little toast, I just want to say my own thank you to Miranda, Lockie, Julian, Brooke, the Whiskey and Almond team for doing what you do as a bar, not just with this event. 10 years you guys have been there. You've been leading the industry, the bar industry, the whiskey industry. You've been such an integral part to everything that goes on, and bringing people together in a time like this, and having these kind of things that you've been doing so often. It means so much to have a whole whiskey fabric, a whiskey family together. So biggest thank you to you guys for not just working with us, but for doing what you guys do. We really appreciate it. And one last little shout out to, we have 25 other bartenders around Melbourne that have joined us tonight as well. And I just want to say a thank you to them as well, because Melbourne is, complete lockdown at the moment. They're not able to get out and go to the bars, but bars and bartenders are so integral in what whiskey is. When we talk about stories, bars are where stories are told and where they start. And these guys are, the people who tell these stories. So I'm going to raise a glass to you guys. Thank you for doing what you do. We can't wait to get back to the bar with you guys. So thanks for joining us. And thanks to everyone else for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. So a little toast at the end. I think this is a toast to the stories we tell and the people that tell them and are part of them. Not just for us at Balvenie, but for everyone in your own life. Stories are important. If you can tell a story or start a story, do it, whether it involves whiskey or not. So thank you all very much again. Thanks to everyone here. Cheers and Slanjava.
Slanjava.
Cheers.
Cheers, Ross.
Slancha.
Cheers.
Thanks for hosting.
And Miranda, over to you. We get an after party now.
Yeah. I'll let everybody know really quickly that we luckily have the entire Balvenie Stories range for sale via the Whiskey and Almond website tonight. If you'd like to take home anything that you tasted tonight, feel free to head over to the Whiskey and Almond website at www.whiskeyandalmond.com.au. And for the after party, we will be chatting with Ross and some of the Balvenie crew. Any questions that haven't been answered so far, we'll be sure to circle back to. You should have that Zoom link in the reminder email where you found the link for this one. So I reckon let's just head straight over there and continue the fun, guys. What do you think?
Brilliant. Miranda, can I ask, can we share the Zoom link in the comments?
Absolutely. I'll grab
for
that.
anyone who maybe doesn't have it, and then we'll join that way.
You got it. It's in my notes.
Cheers.
Just give me 1 sec.
Perfect. It's not often you get an after party with one of these things. It's great.
It's a little chance for everybody to talk to each other, I reckon. It's so amazing. I'd love to see a head count.
Yeah, let's see who we get there. Who's up for the after party? I mean, I can imagine all of the bartenders are going to be there, so it'll at least be them.
Sorry.
All right.
That I'm not able to actually jump over to the YouTube chat, so I've just posted it in our presenters chat just there, and I'm sure someone will be able to.
I'll make sure that it's on the chat. Brilliant.
Got it. All right. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.